Alright, let's do this, Loki. Final four is on. Hashtag priorities. Hey guys, and welcome back to This Week in STEM. I'm Steph, and the first story of the week deals with ants. Yes, those teeny tiny little pests that ruin picnics that Archer is always concerned about. New findings have been published by researchers that shows that ants are able to use teamwork to search new areas, even in microgravity. Microgravity, you say? How do we know this? Well, because in 2014, we sent ants to the International Space Station. Now, these weren't any special superhero, specially modified ants. They were just your basic ants off the sidewalk. Researchers were interested to see how ants would respond to microgravity, and spoiler alert, they really weren't that crazy about it. The experiment consisted of 8 colonies of approximately 80 ants that were housed in plastic containers on board the ISS.
According to Deborah Gordon, the senior author of the study, the idea is to ask the ants to search a small space, and then provide more space and see what will happen when the same number of ants have to use a larger space.
Now, on the International Space Station, the astronauts would remove a barrier in the plastic box, which would expand the ants' area. Then, after waiting a couple of minutes, they would remove a second barrier, expanding the area even further. Now, like I said in last week's video, the key to every successful experiment is a good control, or baseline. In this instance, researchers came up with a really cool way to gather baseline data. They reached out to schools across the country to run similar experiments to that on the ISS on the ground. Now, what they saw on the ground was that after about 5 minutes, the ants would have explored almost the entire box. In fact, in that 5-minute span, almost every corner had more than one ant visit it. And the ants on the International Space Station, well, they had a very different experience. Now, the ants on the International Space Station were trying to accomplish the same goal of exploring the new area, but it took a little bit longer, especially because at any given time, 10% of the ants were floating about, and it would take up to 8 seconds for them to regain their footing. And Professor Gordon was actually pretty interested in how the ants worked to regain their footing after they fell off the walls and were floating through space.
Sometimes they would grab onto another ant and climb back down, and sometimes they somehow managed to just flatten themselves back onto the surface. I think the biomechanics of that are interesting.
Not sure the ants would agree with that word. They would probably use, terrifying, if ants could talk. Which they can't. So what exactly were the goals of this research? Well, researchers wanted to learn from the cooperative methods that ants use. The hope was that they could develop search algorithms for groups of robots. So when you send out a group of robots to search for whatever it is that robots search for, you would need a central control center, which would mean that the robots would be able to search autonomously. I don't know about you, but this entire experiment sounds like a really terrible sequel to Bug's Life, which we'll probably be getting before Incredibles 2. Where's my Incredibles 2 sequel? So while ants and robots are searching for, whatever they search for, you could be helping scientists search for cosmic rays with nothing but your smartphone. Physicists Daniel Whitson and Michael Mulhern have come up with an app for your smartphone that basically turns your phone into a cosmic ray detector. We know very little about cosmic rays, so the hope is that the data gathered from the smartphone app will help us learn not only about the cosmic rays, but about their source, which we know nothing about. Now, these two smart guys came up with this idea while they were working on the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland. Yeah, that Large Hadron Collider. So how exactly does this app work? At the Large Hadron Collider, they use what's called a CMOS chip for particle detection. And it just so happens that smartphone cameras also use CMOS chips. Basically, this app uses that CMOS chip in your smartphone to turn your phone into a particle detector. Now, in order for this to work, they're going to need millions of downloads of this app from around the world. These particles are super, super rare. In fact, in a century, only one of these particles falls on any given square kilometer of Earth. Now, these particles show up when a cosmic ray hits the top of Earth's atmosphere and creates a shower of new energetic particles. And it's these particles that the app will be detecting. And the hope is that enough smartphones will detect these particles in a given area for scientists to take that data and analyze the shower distribution and learn more about the particles. Now, there's lots of skeptical scientists, and there's absolutely no guarantee that this will work. But Whitson is keeping it in perspective, and he had this to say.
We don't know yet if it's the best idea we ever had or the silliest idea that we ever had, but one thing we do know is it's one of the funnest to work on.
Now that we've moved on from discussing robots and smartphone apps, we can move on to a new and exciting medical discovery that came from medieval times? No, this isn't a joke, and no, it doesn't involve leeches. Thank God. A 1,000-year-old Anglo-Saxon remedy for eye infections actually turns out to also be a pretty effective antibiotic against MRSA. Christine Lee, a professor of Viking studies, which is actually a thing and awesome, at Nottingham University, translated the recipe out of a medieval text titled Bald's Leech Book. Ugh. This book is from the 9th century and is actually one of the earliest known medical textbooks. Now the recipe itself sounds like something straight out of one of Snape's potions classes, and it is nasty. It consists of 2 different species of onion and garlic, wine, and bile from a cow's stomach. That is brewed in a brass cauldron and then let sit for 9 days. Researchers made 4 batches of the stuff and tested it on MRSA cultures in synthetic wounds and in rats. Surprisingly, it was super effective, diminishing a well-established population of several billion bacteria down to a population of only about 1,000. Even when the potion was diluted, it still managed to disrupt communication between the bacteria, keeping them from further damaging the tissues. Researchers have actually been looking into this method of disrupting communication as a way to counteract against antibiotic-resistant strains. With the exciting results that came out of just this one potion, researchers are looking forward to translating more medieval potions and testing those out. To which my only response is, not it for guinea pig. So that's it for this week at STEM, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you found this subject matter stimulating and you want to see more like it, feel free to give the video a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Share it with everybody that you know, your friends, your family, your dog, your cat, your hamster, that one shifty neighbor that's always peering through his blinds and judging you. Also, don't forget to check me out on social media. I'll include links to that down below in the description. If you find any really cool STEM-related news stories throughout the week, don't forget to tweet them at me at StephEbs43 on Twitter using the hashtag TWISTEM. And I'm still looking for topics to cover on my Topic Talk segment that sometimes runs on Wednesdays. So if you have any topics that are STEM-related that you are burning to know more about, go ahead and tweet those at me also using the hashtag Topic Talk. Shout out to Baron in Lebanon who texted me and told me to give him a shout out. But stay awesome! And that's all the time we have, but not really, because I actually need to go do my taxes. Yay, adulthood! So I will see you guys on Wednesday! Super genetic modified ants. They were just your basic pavement ants off the sidewalk. Pavement ants. Is that a name? I don't know. We're gonna deal with it. Not drunk, just eat a lot of potato chips and drink a lot of soda. Yeah. Instead of 8 different colonies. Is there a horn? Is there a small child with a horn? No horns! Learn more about the cooperative that what will allow the grace. Book is from the 9th century, isn't it? It consists of 2 different species of gunions and arlic. That happened. Of several billion down to, there's a hair in my mouth. Surprisingly, it was super effective, diminishing in popular. God dang it, hair in my mouth. Ow, I just baked my elbow. Sorry, neighbor.